Hello, um, welcome you to Introduction to Web Development class. This is I am your tutor in this course, and my name is Richard Nayan. And let's proceed. Um, in this field of web development, it is key to understand actually what a website is all about. Now, a website is just a collection of publicly publicly accessible and interlinked web pages that share single domain name. Now, and these publicly accessible um, document or interlinked web pages are written in a language that is known as Hypertext Markup Language, HTML. Now, in this course, we are going to be looking at how the browser interprets the, the file into the visually appealing document that we see on different websites. Okay, so a website is a collection of many web pages, and web pages are digitally arranged files that are written in hypertext markup language. Now, to make your website available to individuals in the world, to people in the world, to everyone, because when you are writing a website, it's usually on your own personal laptop or computer, which is locally accessible. And nobody can access your laptop because it is not connected to internet. It's quite understandable that when you have your pictures in your phone or in whatever devices you have, they are not publicly accessible. People cannot see those pictures when you take them with your devices. But when you upload them, maybe on Facebook, Twitter, and all other social networks you have, people can now go through them, see them, and appreciate them. That is actually how a website is. You type your document in hypertext markup language, and it is locally in your computer. Nobody else can access it. So how do you make it available on the internet? So that will give us another part of web development where you'll be taken to the server end. We'll still come into that. So to make your website available to every person in the world, it must be stored or hosted on a computer connected to the internet round a clock. Such computers are known as web servers. A website is accessible through a special software that is called the browser. So it is the browser that makes it accessible for us to interpret the hypertext markup language. Now, what is a web server? A web server can actually be classified into two, the hardware and the software. On the hardware side, a web server is a computer that stores web server softwares and a website component. For example, the CSS file, the HTML file, the JavaScript, and so many other things. A web server connects to the internet and supports physical data interchange with other devices to the web. And this connection is spearheaded by um, a protocol or instruction that is passed to the server and to the browser. And in most cases, we call it the hypertext transfer protocol, which in other words, we see as HTTP. The HTTP is of two categories. The normal HTTP, which doesn't have the S icon or the key locked icon, meaning that the data interchange is not encrypt. And what is an encryption? Now, most times the transfer of information can be hidden. And when we hide the information between the two computers that are connected through the internet, we call it encryption. And this is done because of security purposes. Um, let's take, for instance, two persons that are discussing, and another person is by the side trying um, to hear what the discussion is all about. If you want to hide such discussion, maybe the two of you can have a particular sign language that it is only understandable by the both of you that are in the communication. Other people around may not be able to understand such sign languages. That is encryption in the human physical world. So in the computer world, the client side of the computer, which is the browser, and the server side, which is rendering the web page, the connection, the transfer of information is done as encrypted file. So when you are looking at, if you have a particular sentence, maybe this is a sentence, it can be encrypted into digits. So when you are actually looking at those digits, you don't tend to understand what the information is all about. And that is how the, the HTTPS comes into being. So the HTTPS comes out of the fact that there should be security for the transfer of information between the server and the client. So this is it. So on the software side, a web server includes several parts that control how web users access hosted files. At a minimum, this is an HTTP server. So that is Hypertext Transfer Protocol server. Try to understand the instruction on how to pass such information, how to transfer such information between the client and the server. So whenever I mention the client, I mean the user, the browser. Okay. Now let's take a look at this diagram here. So we have the computer, which is the client, the browser, which is the client, and we have the server, which is serving the files that we are trying to access through the internet. So you see, the browser renders a request. The browser connects to a server and requests for a page. Now the server interprets the information from the server, from the browser, and then the server serves or sends back the request in form of response. So there is two R in this. The R coming from the client, which is the browser, in form of request, and then the server serving the page to the client in form of response. So this is how the interaction occurs. So most times you can try to access maybe google.com. Now remember, computers don't understand human readable language. They understand the binary language. Binary, which means ones and zeros, just two digits. So the the computers understand more of on and off. So the repeated number of on and off a computer must perform to handle a task is known as the binary. So now, in most cases, these computers, they don't understand human readable languages like google.com. Google is actually a human readable, and now human being also may not be able to understand the binary language. So there should be a form of mediation between the human being and the computer. And this is where the domain name servers comes to be. So we have maybe safe in this example we have here. This is your browser trying to pass a request. The human being, you're trying to access a website that is known as safepage.com. So when you are trying to access this thing, the domain name servers, we have to convert this human readable safe page into the binary, or actually the IPv, which is the IP version, Internet Protocol. So the IP is merged to this. So whenever you are trying to access this particular website, it is going to be mapped to this IP, which is the actual location of the page you are looking for on the internet. Just like you have your addresses, your office address, your home address, whoever that is looking for you will find you in that particular address. The same way in the internet, this is the address of this particular web page. So to make it to mediate between human being and the computer, the main name server will serve this safe page as this IP. Now the server or the web server will understand this and send you to that actual location where the file is stored. And this file is going to be rendered in form of response to the browser, to your browser. And this is the means of communication between the browser and the server. There are so many servers out there. We have the Apache server, which most of the servers are basically on Linux and the Unix operating system. We as well have with the Windows server, which is built by the Microsoft. So the Apache, the Nginx, and the Windows server, they are all different servers on the internet. Now let's look at the branches of web development. Now, as a beginner, you'll be wondering, where should you channel your interest? Where should you concentrate your interest on? How do you go about this? Now, there are front-end web development and there are back-end web development. So the front-end web development is the part that controls what the user will see. It's basically built on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, the HTML controls the structure of the website. How will the website looks like? For instance, if you are trying to build a house, you have your block and your cement and your concrete, where you build and make up, mold the structure of the website. Now you start styling it with your CSS in the physical world after building with the concrete, with the blocks, with the cement. The next thing you do is you try to beautify the house by plastering, painting, furnishing. Okay, so all those aspects in the website development is the CSS. So the CSS is cascading style sheet where you use to style the HTML up. So you have a dormant HTML that doesn't look visually appealing. So when you add your CSS to it, it modifies the structure, trying to add color, fonts, background, border, and other things to make it look appealing to the eye. Now, another language you must also take cognizance of as a front-end web developer is the JavaScript, which adds interactivity to such a website. Interactivity in the sense that it makes the user feel that he or she is actually communicating with somebody in the computer. And actually, there is nobody there, but a language that is known as JavaScript is handling the interaction. Something like when you open up a website, you see a pop-up trying to tell you to perform a particular task before you continue doing anything on your website, on the website you're trying to access. That is actually done by the JavaScript. So these are the concepts or the parts that has to do with the front end. On the back end side, the back end tries to communicate to the database and pass the information and render it as HTML. What do I mean here? You have PHP, you have Java, Node.js, you have Python, you have other languages like Golang, like Rust, like React. Sorry, not React. React is actually a front end framework. So PHP, Python, Node.js, MySQL, these ones tries to pass information to the database, collect it. So for instance, the MySQL is a database language which pass instruction on how to store data, how to update data, how to retrieve data, and how to create data. So for instance, you are trying to open up an account on Facebook. So you're actually trying to pass instruction to the database, store your information. It is done by the MySQL language. So the MySQL language collects your information and store it on the database. You can actually delete your pictures, your posts. It is done by the MySQL. Now, the MySQL retrieves this data and pass it to the PHP, which instructs the server on how to pass such data for security purposes, for authentication purposes, session purposes, and so many other purposes. So when this information that is passed to the server is served to the front end, it is served as HTML. You can never see the browser passing PHP because the browser does not understand PHP. It is a back-end language which is only understandable to the server. So the communication now is in the sense that the server tries to manipulate the data, pass it to the HTML to render it, and the user will see what they are actually looking for. Now, look at the structure of HTML. Now, the HTML, you pass doc type, which instructs on the version of the HTML. And HTML is wrapped between the less than and greater than. So this is the opening tag and this is the ending tag. So each HTML tags must be opened and closed. Although there are some tags that doesn't have closing. Uh, and every other part of the page or the HTML must be within the HTML tag. You can see this is the opening tag, this is another one, and the closing tag it has to be a forward slash in the front. Now the part of this HTML is divided into two. We have the head section, we have the body section. Now the head section passes instruction on how to render the HTML, which includes the meta tags, the title, and the SEO, and so many other things are passed through the head. And then in the body, the instruction of the whole page is rendered, like the heading, the paragraph, the image, the table, the list, the anchor link, and so many other things are rendered in the body. So these are what we'll be seeing. We'll be looking at the practical aspect of it in our next class. Thank you very much for staying in this class. I hope to see you in our next class. Bye bye.